Jujutsu Kaisen students are the lifeblood of the series. They are everything that makes Jujutsu Kaisen. But which one is the strongest and which one is the weakest? Well, that is what we're figuring out today. Here is the criteria I used, and let's get into it. In last, the weakest student in Jujutsu Kaisen is Mai. Mai is so weak. Like, the girl has literally nothing going for her. They gave her a gun and she's still the weakest there is. Granted, it's not entirely her fault as she is splitting her strength with Maki, but the circumstances don't really matter. No matter how we cut it, Mai is incredibly weak. She has low cursed energy output, poor physical stats, and a poor understanding of Jujutsu in general. And it doesn't help that she has a technique that she can't really utilize or a teacher that's also kind of mid. Like, the most she can do with her construction technique is make one single bullet a day. That's worse than Amai's technique, which is literally just making sugar. It's even worse than Arata's technique, which is basically just budget reverse curse technique. Her construction technique also has zero versatility or utility in the lens that she can use it, so it's not like she has any points in those categories either. On top of this, Mai is also just super unmotivated, which doesn't help her for the purpose of strength. She truly has nothing going for her, which is why she's in last. In 15th, we have Arata. Putting Arata over Mai might seem weird, but let me put it to you this way. If we gave Arata a gun, he'd probably be a better sorcerer than Mai. Arata's main issue lies in two departments. First of all, we just don't know much about him, so it's hard to grade his combat abilities when we've never seen him in combat. Now, you may be thinking that should obviously put him in last, right? Well, in my opinion, sometimes no showing is better than a really bad showing like what we got from Mai. Plus, Arata actually has decently good utility as his ability prevents injuries from getting worse and dulls pain, and it was actually really important in the 2 times we saw it used. He might have also saved Nobara's life, but jury's still out on that one. Overall, Arata is still a super weak sorcerer, but the fact he has some use at all is enough to scrape him out of last place like a turd being scraped off the pavement. In 14th, we have Miwa. Look, I love the Go as much as anyone else, but it's time to be honest and put the memes aside. She just doesn't have much going for her from a power perspective. Sure, she can use Simple Domain and is at least decent at sword fighting, but beyond that, she's just not that strong. She does have both offensive capabilities and can act as a support with Simple Domain, as we saw during Sukuna's battle, so she's got more going for her than the 2 below her, but not enough to put her above anyone else. If I'm being honest, arguments could be made for any of these 3 being in any order. They're all just kind of weak and in their own tier of mediocrity. Speaking of mediocrity, at number 13 we have one of the most mediocre sorcerers there is, Momo, who is brought to you by Honkai Star Rail, the best mobile game of 2023 according to the Game Awards. Honkai Star Rail is a new multi-platform space fantasy RPG from Hoyoverse, with the brand new version 2.3 update releasing now. Players will be invited to the Radiant Feldspar for negotiations between the ICP and the family to discuss the future of Penacony. This update introduces 2 new characters. In Firefly, who suits up to become Sam during battle, is a member of the Stellar Hunters who is a fire-type destruction character, and Jade, an opportunistic pawnbroker who is one of the 10 Stonehearts and is a quantum-type erudition character. Version 2.3 will also bring back the super popular characters Ruan-mei and Argenti, and for the first time ever, they've added PvP support during the Origami Bird event. If you download now, you can get 10 free pulls after logging in for 7 days, and you can get 50 Stellar Jade by using the redemption code below. So download Honkai Star Rail now for a rich semi-open world experience filled with over 40 lovable characters. So, Momo, yet another Kyoto student in the early stages of this list. It's crazy this school was presented as being equal to Tokyo when that's just not the case. Momo, however, is the first sorcerer that I would consider somewhat competent, and no, I'm not glazing. See, even though Momo is not good, she is at least knowledgeable and has a deep understanding of her technique. She's able to use it for both combat, as she believes Wind Scythe is quite strong, and utility by flying around and acting as a guide. All of this is to say that despite being weak, Momo is way ahead of those we just talked about, like miles ahead. She is what I would consider the low end of mid-tier, not outright incompetent, but there are far many that are better than her, and this only gets worse when we consider she's a 3rd year. Speaking of weak 3rd years, next we have Kirara. Kirara is a bit hard to rank because we only see her fight 1 time. She seems to be decently strong as she does put up a decent fight against Megumi and Panda, but I think that's more because her technique takes time to figure out and not because she has actual strength. In fact, we can tell she's actually pretty weak because she doesn't fight against Sukuna. She just supports Ui Ui, and as Kusakabe says, there's no point in sending in people that would have no chance against Sukuna, with her being one of those people. While she does provide some utility, overall I think Kirara is just a bit of a letdown. She's had a super minor role as well, which makes it a bit hard to tell just how strong she is. Also, just so we're clear, we are not talking about Ui in this list because he's not actually enrolled in Jujutsu High, as he is too young to be a student there. Just want to get that out of the way now because I know I'd get comments on it. Anyway, at 11 is Nobara. Look, I wish I could put Nobara higher up. She's one of my favorite characters in the entire series, but when it comes right down to it, she's just not that strong. In fact, it could be argued that Kirara should be above her, as she did hold her own in a 2v1 against sorcerers that are above Nobara. But I don't think that's the case, as Nobara does have decent offensive capabilities, and I do mean just decent. This is mostly because her straw doll technique is really only good situationally. Yes, resonance is a very broken ability, but she needs to fulfill a condition for it to actually have its effect, as she needs a piece of an opponent to nail to her straw doll to activate it. If she cannot obtain a piece of her opponent, resonance is not in the picture, and that leaves her with only hairpin, which is not nearly as good. This might not sound like a huge deal, but it kind of is. It's not easy for Nobara to sever limbs. She fights with a blunt object, which already makes cutting objects a challenge, and stronger opponents will have better cursed energy reinforcement, which will make it even harder for her to do what she needs to do. And that's not even considering that she has some pretty abysmal physical stats too, which really does not help her case. So as much as I want to place her higher, I really cannot consider it when we look at her full picture. At 10 we have Inumaki. I talked about Inumaki in my last video a decent bit because he is a character with a really cool technique that ultimately amounts to very little. His greatest feat was using Blast Away on Hanami, and doing that completely decommissioned him, but it's still more than anything Nobara and Kirara did. Cursed Speech has a ton of potential, and Inumaki was clearly good at using it, but it just feels like he never got to the strength that he needed to for the technique to be broken, as he never got the chance to shine in the story like so many others did outside of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, mostly because Yuta can do everything he does better, but more on that later. Regardless, he's still a decent sorcerer, which is why he's near the middle. His main strength is obviously his utility, as the wide variety of words available to him allows him to act in a support role in pretty much every situation. His offenses are okay too, but because more powerful words do more backlash, he is, in general, more suited for a support role, and he just doesn't have the offensive capabilities to keep up with those ahead of him, besides maybe 9, which is Panda. In a lot of ways, Panda is almost the direct opposite of Inumaki. Whereas Inumaki is a great support sorcerer, Panda is really only good at offense, and he is pretty good at it. All three of his forms offer a different sort of offense, with his base form seeming to be the most balanced, his gorilla form hitting hard via unblockable drumming beat, and his Triceratops sister being used for something. Yeah, not ever seeing this form is really holding Panda back. He said this form would kill anyone that saw it, but it immediately got killed by Kashimo, so we never saw it actually do anything. If she is as strong as Panda makes her sound, then Panda deserves to be a little bit higher up. But we also know for a fact that Jujutsu Kaisen characters are not reliable narrators, so it's hard to say that's the case for sure, which makes it hard to take her into account. But I at least want to give her some credit for existing, which is why Panda is not lower. If we don't take Triceratops into account, he falls below Inumaki. At 8 we have Noritoshi Kamo. Kamo is an interesting case. He's obviously extremely knowledgeable on Jujutsu, as he fully understands his technique to the point that he can teach it, and he understands cursed energy manipulation as well, as he can reinforce specific body parts to counter certain techniques. He just happens to have one of the most technically challenging techniques in the entire show. The blood manipulation technique is not great for a regular human. Like, compared to what Chozo can do with it, Kamo is pretty limited because of the limits of his body. He has to get so creative with ways to maximize his blood, like blood-tipped arrows and carrying blood bags, and that's just a lot of effort to be kind of strong. He's essentially a min-maxer in the world of Jujutsu, trying to get every ounce of worth out of every ounce of blood. It's kind of similar to the situation with Nobara. He has to do so much just to be on the same level of strength as people who can achieve the same strength by default, which inherently puts him at a disadvantage. He does have some decent feats though, such as being able to damage Hanami and putting a decent fight up against Cursed Noya. If he was a Death's Painting like Chozo, I have no doubt that he would be an absolute menace of a sorcerer, but he's not, so he's just kind of good. If you want an example of a sorcerer that is good by default, this is where they start to come into play, because at 7 we have Mechamaru. Now, Mechamaru does have a pretty big trade-off, as he does have a heavenly restriction where he must bathe at all times, so he's super pruny. But really, Mechamaru's heavenly restriction grants him huge strength in terms of cursed energy output and the range that he can uses puppet manipulation technique over. This allows him to use Ultimate Mechamaru from said bathtub, which is a really strong tool on its own, as it has a large variety of options for combat, ranging from close combat apparatuses like sword and shield options, to super long range options, and even support options like limited flight. But that's not why he's up here, as Ultimate Mechamaru did lose to Panda. Mechamaru is up here because of the Absolute Mode, a full mech variation of his technique that allows him to temporarily have the cursed energy output of a special grade sorcerer. This is done by using the cursed energy that he saved up while in his tub. Absolute Mode let him go toe-to-toe with Mahito for a bit, and even Kenjaku was somewhat impressed by it. While this technique is presented as being really strong, in reality, it is not that strong. It has a limited time frame for usage, and it doesn't seem to have many options for combat, as we only see him showcase like 4 attacks. Mechamaru also does not have a domain expansion, which starts to matter at this point, and he did ultimately lose to Mahito despite having the information and cursed energy advantages. It's actually kind of crazy that he didn't win this. The dude had such a huge advantage and still couldn't close. Kind of like me every time I face an Elden Ring boss and I get them to the last sliver of their health, and then I still somehow end up losing. Anyway, at 6 we have Megumi. Megumi is the final character in the mid-tiers, but really he's kind of in his own tier because he's too strong to be considered a mid-tier and too weak to be considered a high tier. Despite how much everyone likes to rag on Megumi for being potential man, the dude is still a very competent sorcerer. He's highly knowledgeable on Jujutsu in general, having a deep understanding of the concept with which he supports his absolutely broken technique, the 10 Shadows technique. The 10 Shadows technique is one of the single best techniques in Jujutsu Kaisen, giving the user the ability to manipulate shadows, creating them from cursed energy. The main usage of these shadows is for the 10 Shikigami, for which the technique is named, but the users can also use the shadows themselves for combat and storage of cursed tools as well. Megumi is able to use this technique pretty well, having a decent interpretation for all the Shikigami and fully understanding what each one's purpose is. He's also a great close combat fighter as well, being able to fight with his sword and also just his fists with little trouble. He really checks all the boxes. He has good offensive capabilities, good versatility, and some pretty good utility as well. All of this makes him a highly competent sorcerer, but there is an issue. Sukuna. See, when Megumi got Sukuna'd in chapter 212, his progress as a sorcerer effectively stopped. This means he missed out on the month-long training arc that every other notable student got. That 1 month seems to have made a huge difference in the students, and it's something he simply never got to take part in, which really stunted his growth. This is the main reason that he's not higher up, as all the characters we have left to talk about did partake in said month and are also quite a bit stronger than him as a result. Like our student at 5, Maki. Maki has come a long way from Jujutsu Kaisen 0. She's had more power-ups in this series, going from fairly weak due to her heavenly restriction, to being able to solo the Zenin clan, which includes 2 super strong grade 1 sorcerers, to being able to keep up with Cursed Noya, and being able to take Sukuna's black flashes and rejoin the battle just a few minutes later. Add this to the fact that she's undetectable in closed barrier domains and has heinously good regeneration, and we have a force of a student on our hands. Maki is undeniably strong at this point, but if we're being honest, she's kind of a one-trick pony, as she's only really good for offense. Now, is she really good at offense? Yes, absolutely. She is so far ahead of everyone below her on this list in offense that even without much utility or versatility, she's still a stronger sorcerer than them. That is the definition of overwhelming strength and intensity, and that is a central part of Maki's character. In 4th, we have Todo. Seeing Todo this high up might come as a bit of a surprise to some of you, but it makes a lot more sense when you realize just how broken his Vibroslap Boogie Woogie is. Listen to this. Every single vibration you hear is a time that he can switch 2 objects with cursed energy. According to the manga, that's over 50 times per second, which is so many potential switches that even Sukuna says it is an unpredictable technique. And this is made even stronger by the fact it is now manga canon that objects Todo infuses with cursed energy can be switched, such as rocks as we see in the fight. This basically means that Todo can manipulate the battlefield to any state that he believes is best. And with his extremely high IQ, this is a very powerful tool. But it's not perfect. There are 2 drawbacks that come with the Vibroslap revelation. First, he only has 1 hand to attack with. This might not seem like a huge deal, but it kind of is in a lot of boxing settings. It's like an opponent only fighting with a right hook. It's going to be a lot easier to predict where the attack is coming from and how to block it. This is somewhat counteracted by the Vibroslap's unpredictability and the fact that he's also a decent kicker, but it's still an aspect of fighting that he can't take advantage of. The other issue is a lot smaller. The Vibroslap itself is not optimized. See, a vibroslap works through vibrations. So when you hit the ball, vibrations go down the shaft to the tip, which makes the sound. This means anything that's in the way, like a hand or bandages, is going to prevent the vibroslap from getting its maximum vibrations. This isn't a huge deal, but it does mean that Todo is not quite using his technique extension to its fullest degree, which starts to matter at this point on the list. He also doesn't have a domain expansion, but simple domains somewhat makes up for that. Overall, Todo is a great sorcerer. It's just at this point, details matter, and he lacks just a couple of points overall. In third and second, we have Hikari and Yuji, and to be honest, I went back and forth a lot on which one of these should be in which position. Here's what made it complicated. Jackpot Hikari when put up against Yuji's recent growth. Both of these are extremely impressive. Jackpot is potentially the best defensive ability in the series besides maybe Infinity. It essentially makes Hikari immortal. It's not even the lightning that was shot directly into his skull could take him out thanks to the automatic reverse curse technique that is gained from the ability. This auto reverse curse technique also allows him to surpass Gojo and Sukuna in healing. As I'm sure you can tell, this is a great ability, but it is stuck behind a jackpot roll, which is only a 1 in 239 chance of happening. This means that while the ability is broken, it's not easy to access all the time. Combine this with Hikari's kind of middling offenses, and it should be more obvious why I'm contemplating this position. But on the other hand, there's also the fact that Uraume said that Hikari shouldn't be considered human because he doesn't fight like the modern sorcerers, which is pretty high praise too. Then we come to Yuji, who in the past few chapters has learned blood manipulation, using it primarily for healing and bodily repair, simple domain, which was able to sustain Sukuna's makeshift domain for a while, and he landed like 8 black flashes and a crazy flurry which unlocked Sukuna's technique for him, although he's still pretty bad with that last one. He has become an absolute menace of a sorcerer in just this past fight, and dare I say, he seems to have surpassed base Hikari. This isn't a dig at Hikari, but without Jackpot, he is considerably weaker. I mean, he doesn't even know how to actually use reverse curse technique without Jackpot, when Yuji does and seems pretty good at it. Plus, Hikari has not had much of a showing against Uraume, and the fact that he's taking so long is really not a great look for him either. I think at this precise moment in time, I would have to put Yuji over Hikari. It might be glazing, it might be a bit of overhyping, but it's what I'm feeling right now when we look at both of their entire kits as sorcerers. Yuji is definitely still weaker than Jackpot Hikari, but he is a way more consistent fighter with a larger toolkit available to him than base Hikari. I also think Yuji is overall a more intelligent sorcerer. That's not to say he's super smart, because he's not according to the official academic rankings. Hikari is just a lot worse in that department. So I'm going to say Hikari in third and Yuji in second. And in first, we have Yuta. Yeah, you already knew he was going to be number 1 when you clicked on this video, right? This dude is just too overpowered. He has literally everything a sorcerer could ask for. His technique, broken. Copy allows him to copy an opponent's technique after Rika eats a part of their body. With this technique, he's copied a number of other powerful techniques, including cursed speech, sky manipulation, Charles's clairvoyance, shrine, Jacob's ladder, and Kinjaku's technique, to name a few. This technique works perfectly with Rika, which is another aspect of Yuta that is completely broken, as the Shikigami stores curse techniques for him and can also turn any fight into a 2v1, as Rika can fight and is quite strong on her own, surviving multiple granite blasts over the course of Sendai. And as if that wasn't enough, he also has a completely broken domain expansion in Authentic Mutual Love, where he can imbue any technique he has copied into the domain's barrier and make it the sure hit, while also being able to use other techniques as swords within the domain, allowing him to access them with no secondary conditions like being fully connected to Rika. He's an incredibly broken sorcerer and one of the few characters in Jujutsu Kaisen that has a positive record. He's also the only one whose plan against Sukuna was actually successful, until Megumi fucked everything up. And this isn't even taking Yuta Gojo into account, as we don't fully know what this version of him is capable of yet. You really cannot argue that anyone else should be number 1, and if you do, you're just kind of incorrect. Sorry. And that's all of them. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me, and while you're down there, maybe join the Discord or follow me on Twitch as well. Thank you so much for watching as always. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next week for another video.